Greetings, citizens of the motherfucking YouTubes. My good friend Napalm Tube has run afoul of an apologist, a gentleman by the name of Paleocrat who likes John Denver and wears sweater vests. And he is a presuppositional apologist, a Christian apologist. Now, I'm sure many of you in my audience aren't familiar with the term apologist. What does that mean? Does it mean he's sorry? Well, yes, it does. Apologetics is I'm not sure what you would even really call it. If you would call it a branch of theology or a pseudo-philosophy. It kind of is to philosophy what creationism is to science. It's something that kind of masquerades as logic, but it doesn't adhere to the principles of standard deductive or inductive reasoning. In other words, it's illogical. Now, Napalm Tube is butting his head up against the wall, arguing with this guy. This is something that I simply don't do anymore. I don't argue with apologists, because the minute an apologist opens his mouth, the only response that behooves a man of intelligence is shut the fuck up. Because no matter how the debate begins, it's going to end with the apologist going la 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 la. I mean, think about the word. Think about what this is. Apologetics. What does that say to you? You're literally making excuses for a belief system. That's what it means. That's what it is. And apologists will tell you that. If you ask an apologist, what is apologetics? They'll say it's defense of faith. And that is backwards thinking. I mean, it's literally a reversal of the thought process. Instead of starting with a question and experimenting and finding the answer, you begin with the answer and then work your way back to justify this preconceived, ignorant idea that you had to begin with. Now, I'm not going to give you guys a lesson in classical apologetics or anything, Thomas Aquinas and all that. I'm just going to talk about modern apologetics and what it basically, what it means, what it is. The revolution in thought that came with the Enlightenment and the past 4 centuries of scientific inquiry have been really hard on the concept of God. Every time we illuminate new truths about the world we live in, it smashes one of God's hiding places. You know, where did the human species come from? Oh, we have no idea, so it must have been created by a God. And then, evolution pops on the scene, and suddenly God just lost one of his jobs. And, the more we learn, the more new truths we discover, the fewer hiding places there are for this concept of a supreme being who created everything, and God has to scurry under the refrigerator like a cockroach when you turn on the kitchen lights. The God of the gaps. Every time we fill a gap in our understanding of the universe, the God concept has to jump into another gap and hide somewhere else. And apologetics, the essence of it is entirely intellectually bankrupt. I mean, it's really just very intellectually dishonest. Because people who engage in this are smart enough to know better. So that they really are liars. I mean, apologists are I don't really want to use the term sophist, because I actually respect some of the Greek sophists quite a bit, and I think it would be an insult to their memory to compare them to these jackasses. But the apologist is a man who's more than willing to deliberately deceive, to use intellectual trickery for the heavenly reward that he believes he's going to get by saving souls, by deceiving people into the flock. And the apologist is a man who wants to shoehorn the concept of God back into the modern intellectual discourse in which that concept has become utterly obsolete. Now, for an example of this, look at the way creationism has changed with the times. Okay, in Darwin's day, we didn't hear anything about intelligent design. You know, back then the creationist position was God breathed life into a handful of mud and created Adam, and that was the genesis of the human species. But then, you know, an atheist named Francis Crick comes along and discovers DNA, and now all of a sudden, that DNA, that's the language of God. This is the hidden code of the divine watchmaker who created human life. Well, if that's the case, why weren't you saying it a few 100 years ago? Well, why now? You know, they have to backpedal and keep continually trying to rework the God concept so that it fits the revelations of the sciences. Pretty ironic, isn't it? Creationism has evolved. Well, presuppositional apologetics, which this paleocrat dumbass specializes in, is it's the philosophical equivalent of that. And normally I would not waste my time arguing with somebody like this, because I know where it leads. It's utterly futile. You can't reason a man out of a belief to which reason didn't lead him in the first place. But I'm doing this as a favor to Napalm too, because I know he wants to see this motherfucker get pwned, and as I said to Napalm on MSN, you know, through my entire early 20s while I was a young philosophy major, I spent my college years doing three fucking things: getting fucked up, chasing girls around the campus, and arguing with Christian apologists. This is how I spent my fucking time, so I can make short work of this motherfucker. And let's get started with that right now.
And Fakesagan, he was right to advise you not to debate with Catholics. We've been doing this now for 2,000 years. If he in fact did advise you not to debate with Catholics. Fakesagan should have taken his own advice, because so far, all he's done, for one, experience of the masses equals argumentum ad populorum fallacy. Wow, imagine that. Latin. I'm a Latin Mass Catholic, familiar. He says, I fail. The problem is, I was talking about you. Okay, because you said you were a pragmatist. Now he asked me, what does pragmatism have to do anything with it? And the answer is really simple. It's really simple. So why try to reinvent the wheel? Okay, pragmatism. Pragmatism. Let's talk about, you guys are the atheists and the free thinkers that all just happen to think alike, kind of like all of those really independent people that don't want to look like each other, that go over to Hot Topic and they dress the same in their black clothes and long chains. Okay, you guys always talk about Occam's razor, right? Well, goodness alive, here you've got how many different people throughout history, the masses, have believed in something. But you want to go against the grain. Which one's more practical? To go against the grain or to go with it? We're not talking about truth here. We're talking just about practicality. We're just talking about pragmatism. So why don't you start going with the flow here and start just going along with the masses? That's what it was, Fakesagan.
well, I was a Catholic altar boy and attended Latin Mass, so I know what Latin means. Well, clearly you fucking don't, because you just said populorum. And it isn't populorum, it's populum. Argumentum ad populum. Okay, there's no R. Now, yeah, I guess that just goes to show that hearing repetitive chants in a temple is no substitute for a real education. Now, let me fill you guys in on what he's referring to right there. Now, this is from the comments of Napalm Tube's most recent video, or at least it is at the time of this recording, which is Velociraptors and Lesbian Sex, I believe is the title. And this is what Paleocrat says. I'm not going to read the whole thing, just the pertinent bit. He says, pragmatism would say that the majority of humans in history have believed in religious experience, and that your notion of materialism or naturalism is novel. Elitism. Screw the experiences of the masses. Alright, now I replied to that with a comment, and I said, experiences of the masses equals argumentum ad populum fallacy. You fail. For those in the audience who don't know what argumentum ad populum means, yes, it actually is Latin. It means appeal to the masses. And this is an argument whereby you say, because a lot of people believe X, therefore X is true. So in other words, everyone believes that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, therefore it's true, because everyone believes it. Some of the logical fallacies are a little bit tricky and difficult to understand. That one isn't. I think a 5-year-old can understand why that's not valid reasoning. Okay? And that's exactly what this jackass is trying to employ right here. He's saying, oh, well, the majority of humans throughout history believed in some kind of religious experience, and then here you are with your new, your fancy new naturalistic, materialistic, scientific worldview, and only you're in the minority with that. Most people are retards like me, so therefore, just go with the flow. Get on the trolley. You know what? This is gonna be so fucking easy. It's not even worth my time. You owe me for this, Napalm too.
This one is just exclusively for Fakesagan. The comment, you don't need to acquiesce to my demand for proof, or even admit that you have none, but rational thinkers withhold belief until evidence is supplied. Have fun in La La Land, dipshit. That was his most recent nugget of wisdom and insight. Now, let me explain this. Okay, this is just for you, and this isn't going to be long. It doesn't take long to explain something elementary. First of all, when it comes to burden of proof, we are going here beyond proof.
Okay, that bit that I just played for you, that bit right there, that's from a video that Paleocrat actually addressed to me. It's called, It's Elementary, My Dear Fakesagan, or he's Arthur Conan Doyle or something. Now, he rants on for 7 minutes, essentially saying nothing. But I want you guys to take note of what he said right there. We're going beyond proof. Those are his words. We're going beyond proof. And that is the essence of so-called presuppositional apologetics. It's this transcendental argument for the existence of God, pioneered by the likes of Immanuel Kant, my favorite jackass philosopher. Now, later on in the video, he actually says, "Oh, I bet you don't even know what a presupposition is." Well, actually, I do know what a presupposition is. It's an assumption. That's exactly what it is. What does it mean to presuppose something? It means that we're just going to assume that premise X is true. regardless of evidence. That's the essence of this presuppositional apologetics nonsense. It's, skeptics are asking us for evidence of God. Fuck, what are we going to do? Oh, I know. Let's just say that all human knowledge, right, all understanding, it's based in the Word of God, right? That's the cornerstone, and it's impossible to prove anything unless you begin with this first cause, right? Right. That's what you got to do. And I mean, how can you know anything? What's your precondition for evidence? What's your precondition for standards of evidence? How do you know you can trust your senses? How do you know what you see and hear is real? So it's like a rehashed Plato's cave allegory waste of time. It's basically getting one's head up their ass. Now look. You know what really bothers me about apologists, and this is, I'm talking to you, Paleocrat, here, not the audience. I'm going to stop clowning on you for a second and actually address you directly. After a lot of soul searching, I arrived at the stance that an atheist does not have to go around trying to proselytize believers. I don't feel any obligation to take anyone's faith away and create atheists from the theistic population. I don't feel the need to do that. I'm not sure that someone who's willing to believe without evidence would be much better off as an atheist. I think that person would most likely just become someone who worships the state, or someone who substitutes something else for religion. They'll still be a lazy thinker. If you're not the type of person who's a critical thinker, just robbing you of the belief in God isn't going to cause you to be one. And I see this all the time. I see a lot of atheists who are anything but critical thinkers, especially around here on YouTube. Okay, but what bothers me about apologists is that you are trying to pretend to be something you're not, just as a creationist or an intelligent designer, whatever, pretends to be a scientist. All right, you're trying to play my game. You're trying to pretend to be a philosopher. You're trying to pretend that you're using logic. I've even heard Paleocrat use terms like inductive reasoning. Okay, but what you're doing has nothing to do with logic, because logic has rules. Okay, there are rules to logic. You take valid premises and you derive conclusions from them. So for example, if we begin with the two premises that A, men are mortal, and B, Fakesagan is a man, then we can derive a valid conclusion from those two valid premises that C, therefore Fakesagan is mortal. And if we know that those first two premises are valid, then the conclusion derived from them has to be valid. It borrows validity from the premises. That's how it works. Now, what makes a premise valid? Only empirical observation. In other words, what we can see, what we can hear, what we can smell and touch and taste. What our senses tell us. But you want to presuppose that a premise is true. You're going to begin with the presupposition that God exists. And then we work from there. Well, it doesn't work that way. You are not allowed, you do not have permission to bend the rules of logic that way. That's like a little kid trying to play chess, picking up the bishop and just smashing all the pieces off the board. Oh, my magic bishop killed all your guys. Whoa. Well, no, it doesn't work that way. Bishop can only move diagonally. There are rules to logic that you are not allowed to break. You are not given permission to break or bend those rules. They exist for a fucking reason. And imagine if we were to apply the Paleocrat's way of thinking to other areas of life. Alright, imagine if you were accused of a crime, and when you get to court, the prosecution says, my argument is predicated on the presupposition that the defendant is guilty. And we can argue about anything else, but that presupposition is assumed. It doesn't work that way. But what if he's right? What if Paleocrat and his presuppositional apologetics are valid? What if the world that we see it's not real, right? Kind of like the Matrix. What if what if the things of this world are just a thin veil of smoke obscuring this ethereal, phantasmagorical realm of platonic forms and airy bullshit? Well, there's a pretty easy way to dismiss that. There's a pretty easy way to dismiss Paleocrat's nonsense about, how does your naturalistic logic work when there are preconditions for evidence? The fact that we have airplanes and vaccines and the computer that somehow you managed to turn on all by yourself, Paleocrat, that's how. Okay? Clearly the findings of the natural sciences are valid and they work. And if you don't think so, then the next time you get sick, go to a fucking witch doctor. Go and see a priest or a shaman, you jackass. But if you go to a fucking doctor, then clearly you accept that science works. Anyway, man, I'm frustrated. This takes me back. A little blast from the past for me. I know that apologists have a very hard time shutting the fuck up, and that you're going to reply to this video. I would tell you not to waste your time, but I know you're going to do it anyway. But I'm not going to reply. There's a reason that I don't argue with idiots like you anymore, and that's that I value my sanity and my time. So, peace the fuck out. Truth fucking first. Keep it fake.
Okay, I've been relatively tolerant of stupidity for a long time.